is approval of the minutes for our September the 11th meeting. Everyone should have a copy of the minutes in front of you that were emailed to us. You'll take a look at that and see if there's anything for discussion or if there's a motion.
So moved. Adoption of the minutes.
Motion to adopt the minutes.
A second.
And a second by Amy. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. And the minutes for our September 11th meeting are approved. Next is the approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second. Motion to approve and second by Missy. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed. And the agenda passes for tonight. Moving right into the division report. We have an environmental health on-site water protection program update.
Well, good evening, everyone. So tonight, David Finley, who is the program supervisor for the on-site water protection program, is going to give kind of a summary and overview of his program. This will be the third environmental health presentation. We've already done food, lodging, and institutions, children's environmental health with our environmental health education and outreach. So David will complete the trio and give you some information on the on-site water protection program.
Thank you. As Tracy was saying, this is kind of completing the full circle of the presentations over the past, I guess, few months concerning the programs in environmental health. And we all kind of are connected here, and so just showing this picture here with the food and lodging institutions, children's environmental health, and then the program I work with is the on-site water protection. We kind of dip in and out of each other's programs because we kind of cross-connect. We all have connections, but whether it's with well water or septic systems or even just for children's environmental health with lead investigations. We do the water sampling and testing for lead in their water sources. So under the on-site water protection program, some of the key things that we do. On-site wastewater disposal systems, we do the permitting, inspections. As part of that, we have a maintenance and operations program for certain types of systems. These are systems that have some complexity to them. A lot of them are engineered type systems that require ongoing maintenance. There's some sampling of effluent wastewater on some of these to make sure they're properly treating the wastewater. I have a program specialist in our program, and one of her primary roles is to monitor this, the operation and maintenance program for the systems. Private drinking water wells and irrigation wells. We do the site assessments, we do permitting and inspection of both drinking water wells and irrigation. Just a note there, so with the state mandated requirement is for drinking water wells. We took an extra step several years ago, some of you may remember, where we recognized that irrigation wells, although they were not required to be permitted at the state level, we saw it as it had the same potential risk of causing contamination to our groundwater supply, thus our drinking water. So the county here adopted an ordinance that basically said we're going to treat irrigation wells just like drinking water wells. And I'm glad we're doing that. So well water quality, sampling analysis, and also reporting out health risk evaluations. So on all new wells, we do require bacteriological nitrate and a panel of inorganics, and then we shoot those results out to the property owners, so they'll have their water quality information. Downhole camera well assessment. I have another well program specialist, Ed Eason. He operates a downhole camera. These are situations where say when we're doing a bacteriological sample and we have E. coli that shows up, that's an automatic trigger where we're going to offer a full detail assessment using a downhole camera and look for infiltrations, things that we could potentially even shut off with some liners being installed in the well. We do complaint investigations. These are usually, a lot of these are on-site wastewater complaints. Neighbors, people living next to other people that have wastewater systems, and they're not always functioning properly, so we have to get involved sometimes. Then Union County has a solid waste ordinance, and so the on-site water protection program is involved with enforcing that as well. So with the on-site wastewater disposal systems, a lot of what we do is a lot of field work. And as you can see in the picture here in the top, there's a gentleman there working an auger, a hand auger. That's part of the tools that we use for our soil and site evaluations. I will say though, a few years back, we made some policy changes where for all new developments, for new septic systems, we do require a backhoe now. And there's a lot of environmental health specialists in our office is very happy with that. The shoulders, and it's just really hard on the body. And it answered a few problems that we had. One of those was retention. We were having some difficulty retaining good, qualified environmentalists to do the work. But it also answered the question for the time. We really, there was a few other things that we did as far as with the scheduling, but we shortened the wait times a lot with this, as well as, I wouldn't be able to give percentages, but we feel like that this, using the backhoe, if you can imagine with a hand auger, you're talking about a 3 to 4 inch diameter boring in relationship to a 3 foot wide bucket that's digging a big pit that we walk down in. A lot more data set to evaluate, and really opened up, I think to some degree, probably permitting the property that we may not have before. So we do the site evaluations. We also prepare designs and issue those on the permit. Down at the bottom, you'll notice it says marginal soils and site limitations equal complex systems and money. I started doing this in 1995, and the majority of our systems were fairly basic. We're talking conventional, maybe a pump to conventional. Probably the biggest thing was low pressure distribution, which we even permitted still. Today, we're getting a lot of systems that require engineer designs. So there's some complexity to this now that we did not used to have. And so from a permitting perspective, I spend a large part of my days reviewing designs and also looking at engineer designs and lights and soil sciences reports. It's becoming more complex. We're responsible for the maintenance inspections and reporting from certified operators. Again, this is for systems that are very complex, just as I was talking about. One thing that I'm really excited about is our Trimble geodes. Now, this was a major investment that our program went into this past year, and it's going to pay off greatly. This allows us to geolocate our septic systems. It also allows us to geolocate our approved wastewater areas. So when we're doing site assessments on large subdivisions, we're able to geolocate the areas that we're approving, and we're able to use this information holistically, not just for that subdivision, but it kind of carries itself down to when we're dealing with the same properties maybe 10, 15 years from now. It allows us to look at information that we've never been able to before, where previously our information's been disjointed. It's been based on physically researching documents. Now we can go to a GIS map and everything's there. So we're on the beginning phases of that, but we use that to prepare permits, to do inspections now. So we're actually geolocating actual system locations. So the way I see it down the road, hopefully this information will be available to the public, and they'll be able to actually, kind of like when you go to Go Maps, if you ever go to Go Maps GIS, you know, right now you can pull up tax records, right? So hopefully maybe down the road, they'll be able to pull up their exact location of where their drain lines are, where their septic system is, where their well is, maybe where the neighbor's well is. You know. Investigate complaints. And as you can see down here, approximately 40% of Union County residents do rely on a wastewater system. So this is just a little snapshot of the activities in our program. And you can see this is over a 7-year fiscal year data. On the right-hand side, if you'll notice, those are the percentages of change over those 7 years. We've had a 75% increase over that 7-year period for the number of permits that we do issue. 79% for system inspections. That second one that you see there, those are inspections that we do. Say if you're wanting to add a sunroom onto your house or a deck, or you want to do something that's going to require pulling a building permit, we have to go out and make sure that we've got proper setbacks from the septic system, from a well, that kind of thing. All right. So just to kind of put some numbers to the operation and maintenance program. So the type 3 system that you see on the top of that, the frequency is 5 years, and the number of system types is 5,129. Those are your basic conventional systems with a pump. North Carolina regulations says that we are, as the permitting agency, we are required to review those systems on a 5-year cycle. Type 4 is just down below. That's for low pressure pipe systems. We currently have a little over 2,000 in the system, and we have to review those on a 3-year cycle. Those systems starting from type 4 down, so you got type 4, 5, and 6, those are all the systems that are required to have a certified operator. And when we talk about a certified operator, most of them are required to do inspections on a 6-month cycle. Once we get down to the type 5, the frequency increases. Usually when we get to some of the type 5s and type 6s, we're talking about the certified operator is required to do ongoing sampling of the effluent to make sure that it's being treated properly. And then we are to receive reports at least once a year, as well as just monitoring that they're actually doing the inspections, which I'll be honest with you, that's a big part of this program. So when we talk about our drinking water, one of the things I want us, I guess, just to kind of point out here is that there's 2 different avenues when we talk about drinking water. One is the public water supply and community water systems. These are water systems that are actually regulated by EPA standards through the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act. It requires a certain level of water quality. For private drinking water wells, they do not fall under the Safe Drinking Water Act. So EPA is not the they're not governed by EPA, but they are, private drinking water wells are governed by the local permitting authority, which is us. And so we have that responsibility, like I was talking about with the water sampling, and for new wells, we have those, the panel of water testing that we do. And as part of that, we do issue a water quality report for all the new wells. Currently, you can see approximately 25% of the county's population does rely on private drinking water wells. And just to note, well owners are responsible for keeping their water clean and safe. So there is, I think, within the community, there's probably some misunderstanding, some aggravation even, that there's maybe not more oversight in this area, and I can understand that. And this can be a discussion for another day, but there's some people that would say, hey, why isn't a certificate of occupancy not tied to water quality with a drinking water well? Because right now, through the state, it's not.
Let me just ask a real quick question. Some years ago, Tracy gave a very detailed presentation on the private drinking water wells. And one of the things that was kind of scary to me was you were talking about the arsenic that was in a lot of areas here in Union County. And the question I have is, when it comes to that permitting, are you guys testing to check the arsenic before they get the permit? Or where's the arsenic at? Or do they know what areas the arsenic is in Union County in case someone wanted to try to buy some land or something?
It's a good question. He's asking about the arsenic that's been brought up before. And that's actually in this presentation. So I think it's not even the next, I think it's the next one after this. So I'll get to that question. His question was, are we able to know about arsenic levels in a certain area before we even issue a permit? So I'll speak to that in just a little bit. Okay, so another big part besides on-site wastewater systems is private drinking water and irrigation wells. So obviously we do permitting, inspections. We do consult with individuals with wells on issues that they may have. There's a list of some of the water sampling, the bacteriological, inorganic, nitrate. We do offer petroleum, pesticide, and herbicide. Those are not samples that we collect automatically, but it's just one of the other options that people do have. Especially if with older wells, prior to the setback requirements, you may find some wells that are right, maybe even inside a building or right next to a foundation. And any of you that have had pesticide treatments, you know that a lot of pesticide treatments are done right around the foundation. So whenever we have property owners that have those kind of wells, that's one of the suggestions that we may give them. Again, the health risk evaluation that we provide after the results, the downhole camera. And there's a lot of community outreach that goes along with those health risk evaluations. As you can imagine, there's sometimes going to be a lot of concern and, seeing the results of water is not safe to drink. So we need to speak to that. And research partners. So to the question about the arsenic, we actually did partner up with UNC Chapel Hill, as well as a professor from UNC Charlotte and some students, NC State. They did a well boring. It wasn't a drinking water well, but it was more just I would say more of a core sampling on the property at Jesse Helms Park. And one of the things that they are studying is arsenic. And they're looking at the levels of arsenic within the regolith, the areas just prior to where it's consolidated rock, which is where, from a drinking water well's perspective, that's once we get into consolidated rock, we set the casing, but we do believe that there's some influence there in that upper zone with arsenic exposure. I'll hold off I'll tell you a little bit more later on that, but just for water quality in general, these are some of the numbers of the most common contaminants that we do see. Manganese, 37%. Arsenic 22, iron 21%. And then in the bacteriological, the coliform, 32% on average and 4.5% for E. coli. Some of you may have seen these maps in the past. It's a little bit hard to see, but on the one on the left, if you'll notice, that's arsenic, and with the eye, when you're looking at it, it looks like that the yellow and the red are the areas that are elevated, and the red is excessively elevated. For the most part, it looks like that it's fairly spread out over the county. But I will say, if some of you are familiar with down towards Cane Creek area, Highway 16 coming from South Carolina, if you were to draw that line from the South Carolina line up to where it runs into Waxhaw, and then right there at Crossroads Coffee, if any of you guys are familiar with that, you take a right and that turns into Waxhaw Indian Trail Road. You run Waxhaw Indian Trail Road all the way up, and then eventually you hit up on 601 North and you go straight up. There's a very high percentage, especially for the excessively high levels of arsenic. And it kind of seems to be, there's some relationship here potentially with the geology that we have, because the roads that I was describing to you, that is roughly where it delineates from Carolina slate to more of a granite material. So on the right-hand side, so a large percentage of the county, and all of the eastern and northern part of the county, a lot of that's Carolina slate. And which is one of the reasons also that the research project, they wanted to look at this particular area. So with that being said, we haven't gotten all the results back with them, but we're hoping to learn some things and just kind of throwing some of the stuff out that I'm thinking about is based off of the data that they give us. I'm wondering can we maybe enforce deeper casing depths that could potentially cut off arsenic. We don't know for sure, but hopefully with some of this data that we're going to be getting with the research, that this can give us some clues.
One other thing that they're focused on is developing lower cost treatments for residences to treat arsenic and manganese, which is considered a co-contaminant, because you can see from the map that many locations are elevated for arsenic and manganese at the same location.
So just speaking of potential contaminants, the picture on the upper left, that's a good indication of, I was talking about the Carolina slate belt. And you notice there's not only fractures running horizontal, but there's a lot of fractures running vertical. We have that, especially in that first 43 feet. It's highly fractured with the potential for a lot of vertical fractures. That lends itself to be things on the surface or close to the surface could potentially be a contaminant issue just because of the way that the fracturing is run. Other things also, the top right, a lot of you are probably familiar with PFAS, the foaming agent that fire departments have used in the past. One of the biggest industries that we have here is the chicken industry. A lot of the applications, land applications that are involved with that. And for that matter, a lot of these chicken houses are out in the area where it's Carolina slate. Again, soils are very shallow, highly fractured rock below it, so there's a potential for a lot of influence. Plus, just, littering, contaminants, human, involvement with nature. We've got this manhole wastewater shooting up out of the manhole, so we've got contamination along those lines as well we have to think about. And then we have the pills. I'm sure a lot of you have maybe heard about some of the research that's been where they have found derivatives of pharmaceuticals in our water supply. I would assume that this could potentially be the case for groundwater supply as well. As far as programs, we've got 2 programs that we have been working on that were initiated this year. Well, the private drinking water well rehab and repair, that was initiated this year. As you can see, we started taking applications July 1st, and we did extend that through August 31st. I don't have the total numbers right now, but I know as of the 1st of September, I think we had received around 25 applications, and we've got 31 applications, and we've got, I think, 3 or 4 that have been approved, and I think there's a few that are still pending. So this is for individuals that meet a certain income level, that have concerns for their water supply. And if they are approved in phase 1, which is more of it's an application, make sure that you're a resident and you own and that's your place of residence. This isn't for people that rent property or anything like that. So, and that they meet a certain income qualification. If they meet those thresholds, then our office will follow up with them and get further information about their well. And then we've already started some site assessments and some sampling. And I think as soon as we're able to get a contractor on board, I think we're actually going to follow up with some downhole camera assessments on a couple of these as well. Another program that was started last year is a community development block grant. This is through HUD, federal funds. That has, I think we were allocated around $270,000 for that. We've received some applications. There has been a hold until they can work out some logistics and contracting, but hopefully they'll start that process back up, but we'll just have to wait and see. And just with the well rehabilitation and repair, as part of our sampling and site assessments, we will have a scoring system to help kind of prioritize the wells that need the most help. I guess the people that drink the wells need the most help, right? Other responsibilities, as we said, the complaint investigations. When you think of environmental health, it's a very large umbrella. And so we do field a lot of calls that are actually, not necessarily within a mandated program, but we try to still offer services. I can tell you the indoor air quality, moisture, mold, and radon, those kinds of things. I know Tracy personally takes that lead a lot, just answering calls and giving as much information as possible. Don't have really a program to it, but we just offer as much help as we can. Vector control, we don't have a vector control per se, but we try to educate and inform people on proper processes. And, as far as with mosquitoes even, just the tip and toss program, if some of you have been familiar with that, the solid waste ordinance. And we also do, we do partner with the emergency preparedness with the county. Some accomplishments. So as you saw, the mapping of some of the contaminants, we've been doing some of that still, along with the S3 geolocation. There's going to be some further mapping. We're already issuing permits with our geolocating devices. It's been very helpful. All of the on-site wastewater records for the longest time has been living in microfilm and files, boxes. All of that has now been digitized. We have updated policies and processes. One of those that I spoke to was our backhoe policy. Just to give you an idea, at one time, our wait times was around 16 weeks. As of this past week, we're between 1 to 2 weeks wait time. Let's see. The CDBG, that's going on. We currently have 3 septic systems and potentially a 4th that will benefit from the Community Development Block Grant. Hopefully get assistance with their wastewater system. Okay. Oh yeah, licensed soil scientist. I do want to say, probably one of the best decisions that we have made in a long time from a staffing perspective is that we have hired a licensed soil scientist. Her name is Connie. I think coming up this February will be 2 years that she's been with us. And I would just say this, speaking to the complexities, with the complexity of soils and the systems that we're now having to deal with, she really adds a lot of credibility. She's between our agency and the professional services that are provided by the engineers and the private licensed soil scientists. She can speak to those complexities. Great benefit. Okay, trends. There has been an increased awareness of contaminants, just in general with water quality, I believe. We speak of PFAS, the forever chemicals. We are aware that this can be present in groundwater supply. We are working on doing some sampling ourselves in the county to create a baseline for that as well, so we can be ready when that time comes, if we have to deal with that as well. I would just say the wastewater treatment technologies, again, the complexities are increasing. We're not creating land anymore, and so the land that we are now developing are calling for higher levels of treatment, I guess would be the best way to put that. And then some of the things that we are dealing with right now through legislation, starting January 1st, we will be under a new set of rules. So between now and then, including myself and the rest of the staff, we will be working on getting ourselves up to speed with new regulations. Private option permitting is another big one. It started in 2018 with legislation, but I'll just say this, with legislation, there's a common thing, and it's especially with on-site water protection, there's a push for private industry, privatizing certain things that we do. That's a good, I mean, it's not a bad thing, but I think we would be naive if we didn't think that there could be some issues that can come out of this that we do need to be aware of. You know, we're talking about permitting that we're not involved with now, but legislation has even changed from the time they started in 2018 to now, where although we're not involved with the permitting, new legislation actually says that, let's just say if they start having problems, requests for repairs, whatever, they can come to us and then we have to deal with it. There's a lot of things involved with that. And I won't get into that at this point, but it's going to cause for a very interesting, probably years down the road, to see how we approach situations that may not be permittable, I guess. Along with that, legislation has also allowed for private inspections. So just so you understand, you know, we do a lot of our own inspections, right? Even the permits that we prepare and issue, with today's legislation, there are private inspections that are allowed now with authorized on-site wastewater evaluators. So I think I'll just leave it at that. So with that, if you do have any questions, I'll be happy to answer if you have any.
One more, I'm sorry. You said something about deeper casing. That means more a deeper well. So to get past this arsenic, what would be maybe the average depth that would have to be to maybe bypass some of this casing that you were talking, slate you were talking about?
So right now in the Carolina slate, you have to have a minimum of 43 feet of casing. And that's just by regulatory requirements. If we have enough data that shows that some contaminants or some levels of contaminants could potentially be at a deeper depth, we can require deeper casing and grouting based on that. And I'll just give you a quick example. We were doing a lot of permitting of wells in a development that was right next to with a floodplain area. And we were noticing that we were getting a lot of coliform and some E. coli at certain depths, where we speculated it, because based off of where they were getting the water coming in. And as a result of that, we decided in that same area with the additional wells, we required the casing just to go down 15 more feet than what they were doing. And we were finding that not all of them, but a good percentage of those were not having the same coliform. So somewhat anecdotal, you know, with our response. But when we talk about from a regulatory perspective, we can't just arbitrarily at times dictate where casing is placed or grouting is done. But if we have data that can really establish that, then that's something that we can stand on and we can make it a condition of our permit.
When you showed the map and you took us out 75 to 601, you know, where in that area did it start the shift? I was trying to follow along. Like when it first comes to it, or after you've crossed 74?
Is this over corner?
Can you even see the point?
A dot on the dot.
So, I guess it's somewhere over in here. Do you know where Cane Creek is?
Mm-hmm.
So, Highway 16 comes up through here. And then, right here is in Waxhaw, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just past, you go over the railroad tracks, and then the Crossroads Coffee, you're right there, take a right. That's Waxhaw Indian Trail Road. And that's running us right up through, about right in where the 74 is, right? And then from there, it kind of crosses over right in here. So it's just speculation, but based off of just that information, it just seems like that there is a correlation there with where Carolina Slate is, that we see a lot of the increased levels of arsenic.
So you mean stronger levels at the juncture between the slate belt, where the slate belt meets the granite formation?
Right, but then everything out here in the Carolina Slate. So this is all Carolina Slate over here,
Mhm.
right? And then over here, we don't have quite as much. This is where the granite rock material is.
And then I have one other question about the arsenic and diabetes. Did I see something in one of your things on that?
Diabetes.
Right, so UNC Chapel Hill, the Superfund Research Project, that's part of what their research is toward obesity and diabetes and how arsenic may affect that. And they're actually continuing to work on that. So they wrapped up this first phase of the research project, and then they're moving into the next phase. So I would imagine they would be publishing some information in the coming months or years on that. It's a very interesting project and multifaceted, not only from what we're interested in is the true construction data where we can actually do something to change or reduce the levels of arsenic in the water, but they're also expanding on that and looking at the health effects of arsenic and co-contaminants such as manganese, in other ways that's impacting people.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I've got one, and then just a comment. What you just stated, they're studying cancer rates with the arsenic right now?
I believe that is part of their study.
Okay. Well, I've been concerned for quite a while since I moved into the area, of the number of patients that I've seen in the area that I found with arsenic toxicity, in their system. Some of them very ill, with a lot of neurological problems occurring. And I haven't really seen a lot of other local people testing for it. And I wonder how much of the knowledge is in the medical community in the area that there are a lot of problems with it. Because I don't see it getting tested very much, but I know it is a problem. Because just out of, less than 1,000 people in the last few years I've checked, there's over a dozen that have high levels. And this county also has high rates of cancer compared to other areas of the state where heart disease is number one. This county, cancer is number one. And I just want to make one comment too. I know there's some ongoing discussion about fluoride in the water, the public water locally. And that's something to consider, I think, with the fluoride, is that all fluoridation does increase the arsenic in the water as well. And if we already have a problem in the area with arsenic, I'd be interested if the study that's ongoing, how much does that more contribute to it? If having fluoridation does increase arsenic content even further in all the studies I've looked at, how much does that increase the risk of cancer?
So I appreciate your comment. So the panel of inorganic contaminants that we look at includes fluoride. There are very, very few situations, like 0.04% of samples that we collect because we're groundwater, we're wells, are elevated for fluoride.
Yeah, that's the groundwater. I know that's what y'all are talking about tonight, but just making a comment about the cancer, with arsenic, and that leads me into a different topic, that's the public water. But I know there's ongoing debate locally about fluoride in the water. So, I think it's a relevant thing to think about, is that the fluoridation does increase the arsenic availability too. And some of these patients that I've seen, it's been very difficult to figure out where they're getting the arsenic in their system from, because not all of them, it's been wells.
So remember that public water is regulated by the Safe Drinking Water Act. So arsenic is something that if it's elevated, it's treated for and removed. Public water.
If if fluoridation is something that's considered to be removed, from what I've seen, it would take that arsenic level down a little bit. I don't know how much of a significant increase it is, but if it does increase it, it would lower it though.
Arsenic is not elevated in public water.
If it's fluoridated, it would have a little bit more in it than non-fluoridated waters. This is the point I'm making with that.
Along that lines, and this is gonna sound like a dumb question, I'm gonna ask it anyway, okay? Like, when the public water is coming to your house, can it get contaminated through your own pipes? Like,
It
on the way
can,
there.
it
Some of-
can.
Some of the
I'm sorry.
contamination can occur depending on the age of the home and the type of pipes that are used. Lead solder is typically the issue that we would be concerned with. And the only way you would know would be to have your water sampled at the tap.
Right.
Typically after a period of time, if we're involved in a child lead poisoning investigation, we'll do a first draw sample at the point of use, typically in the kitchen, after the water's been in contact with the pipes for about 8 hours.
thank you.
Yeah, and I just piped in on that one because at the federal level, there's a big initiative to indeed check some of these pipes that deliver to the end user, to the end customer. And because of like lead soldering in the pipes and some of the older metallurgy that was embraced back then, there are some issues. There are some instances where you're getting arsenic and other heavy metals in water, and that's a big initiative that everybody is starting to grapple with at the local level. I know in the next year or two there'll be a big push in Union County and in our municipalities to address that and test for those sorts of problems, and where there is an issue to go ahead and replace those lines closer to the customer.
There's no telltale sign though of something like it, like if you turn on your tap and we have one that comes out milky white, I'm always like, what is that? But I know hard water can be an issue, but there's no, arsenic doesn't smell, so what, there's no.
Yeah.
Sometimes but
So, a lot of the inorganics are associated with aesthetics as far as taste and color and things, but arsenic itself, you don't know until you test for it. Yeah.
And if I could just follow up on one thing that Commissioner Williams said, I think you remember what I had talked about, several months ago about the Clean Water for Carolina Kids program. That's the program that's been in place that Environmental Health was involved in, where child care facilities were required to sample their points within their facilities where they obtained water for drinking or cooking, and if they were found to be elevated, and obviously that's not in the public water source, those elevated locations were because of contact with pipes or fixtures or that kind of thing. So environmental health would get involved and track back where those elevated locations are and require fixtures to be replaced or removed or remediation to occur. So that's an example of that, that getting started. We want to focus on children first, their developing neurological systems and so forth.
And that's why I felt stupid asking it, but I don't
no.
think that people realize that their public water can get contaminated. You know what I mean? Like, we talk about wells and stuff, but that's not the only way.
It's very, very important.
Getting back to wells, if a residential well permit, they're required to get their water tested when they first have the well dug to prove that it's producing quality water. After that, is there any requirement to get tested?
So let's talk a little bit about that, the sequence of events and how that's occurring.
So, right now, North Carolina well regulations require that when a well is installed, that, and from the processes that we do, we permit it, the well driller installs it, pumps installed, and then we go out and do a final inspection on that well, and we issue what's called a certificate of completion. That is our final inspection from the construction part of it. We issue that certificate of completion. Now, we send out all kind of communication to them saying, hey, just so you know, within 30 days of us issuing the certificate of completion, we need to take a sample of the well. The issue with this is we don't have control over when that well is going to have power. We don't have control of when it's going to be flushed out. So we rely on the customer, the well owner, to contact us to schedule that sample, the sampling. They've already paid for it. They paid for that with the well permit. But we rely on them to contact us back. So to your point, as far as the sampling, we may not be able to get them right the way it is right now. We issue that certificate of completion. If everything else is done, they could be getting their certificate of occupancy that same day through building code enforcement. They're in there, they're living in there. We do have instances where a developer is the one that we are communicating with, because that's the only information that we have based on the permits that were provided. We sometimes don't get callbacks, because by that time it's a new owner and they have not received any of the communication. So then we have to, at some point, try to reach out, do a drive-by, knock on the door. So, there's some challenges that are associated with the way the system is in place now. So there's a potential that people are living in their home with a new well, drinking that water, and they don't know anything about the water quality. Or, I'll say this, we've even changed our policy on how we're reporting water test results. Specifically, right now we do a bacteriological, which we handle that in-house. It goes to the lab up a couple floors up. We get the results back within 24 hours. In the past, as soon as we got the results, we would draw up our health risk assessment for the bacteriological and submit that. And then about 4 weeks after that, we would follow up with the inorganic health risk evaluation and send that out. So we were sending out essentially 2 reports. The bacteriological could say, based on bacteriological analysis, your water is safe to drink. 4 weeks down the road, they would get the HRE for the inorganics, and it would say, based on inorganics, your water is not safe to drink. Okay. What we found was there was a potential there that we believe was occurring was the sale of the home. Any of those situations in a transaction with real estate, they would use that bacteriological report saying water is safe to drink, and they would provide that to the property owner that's now living there. 4 weeks down the road, we would send that HRA for the inorganic saying that it's not safe to drink. You know, and maybe sometimes they don't get that report. So today, we hold that bacteriological until we get the inorganic, and we issue one report. It's all together. The exception to that is if the bacteriological is present for coliform E. coli, we automatically send that out, right?
And furthermore, I mean, ideally, we would not want the home to receive a certificate of occupancy until all the water sample results are back and the results are deemed potable. In other words, the water's safe to drink. You got a young family that moves in, you got someone that's undergoing cancer treatment, the water is safe. The building code, the plumbing code requires the home or facility to be served with potable water. And that is determined by the public health agency, which is environmental health, because we're receiving the results and interpreting them. Right now, we don't have the authority to hold that certificate of completion, which is typically what triggers the release of the CO. We would like to, we think that makes sense, and that's protective from a public health standpoint, but that's not where we are. Because it adds time, it adds time for that second group of water samples to come back, because those samples are sent to the state lab in Raleigh. They can take 3 to 4 weeks. So we encourage folks, as part of the process, we're trying to encourage kind of a behavioral change to go ahead and get that well drilled earlier in the process. Let's get the well in, let's get the power or temporary power, let's get it flushed out and get the samples taken so that there's no delay in the construction process. In fact, it's easier for the driller because they can get that rig in without having to work around the sidewalk that's poured or the driveway or the fancy landscaping and all that kind of stuff.
So is there some direction in changing the rules to make it so the certificate of occupancy is dependent on the water quality of the well?
That's something that we're working on.
Yeah, we're working on that. I wish we could hold the certificate of completion, but the way the legislation is written, it basically says that we cannot do that. So as the way it stands right now, we really need to rely on the interpretation of plumbing code. And I guess down the road, we'll see if we can get some partnership, I guess.
With the map looking like your odds are greater than 50% that you're going to have a well that exceeds arsenic or manganese, either exceeds or severely exceeds, it seems like it should be a priority.
Indeed.
If you get something where the well's already dug, and you have that CO, you come back and say, okay, no, the water's not safe. How easy is it to ameliorate the problem?
We have some very responsible builders and developers that do take responsibility for that. We have others that are reluctant to do so, that they see that as the responsibility of the property owner or the new resident. Do you agree with that, Dave?
Yes, but as far as the options, the options are there for proper treatment. We definitely have the treatments are available to basically take care of whatever contaminants that they do have. So, the big thing is just making sure that I think the appropriate parties get the information and will act on it.
Is there evidence of any harm that has occurred due to the process delay that you were just speaking of? Has there been any civil suits on problems locally, or evidence of harm that has occurred?
Not that
there's
we're
not
aware
really
of.
any real harm occurring. I couldn't see saying we need to hold a certificate of occupancy if nobody's really been actually harmed from it.
Yeah, I guess we just don't have the smoking gun, I guess, to be able to speak to that. I mean, I will say, there are some people that are not real happy. I mean, as far as just agitated property owners. One gentleman, he made the statement, he said, when we had, this was one of those where he had gotten his CO. He's been living in that house maybe a month, 2 months, I'm not sure exactly how long, but you know, we finally get the water samples and he's getting the results and he's saying it's not safe to drink. And he called up and he said, hey, something's not right here. I wasn't able to get my certificate of occupancy because I didn't have a sticker that said that the glass that was in my door was proper, was tempered glass. But you're telling me I could get my CO and be able to have my well water that's apparently has high in arsenic and has a lot of health risk associated with it. He's like, that doesn't make any sense to me. And I said, it doesn't make any sense to me either. So
Yeah,
it's noticed.
So how often does that actually occur then? That's what I'm wondering about. What percentage of the time are people, I'll ask it this way, are they unhappy or there's something adverse that was discovered or delaying it would be an issue? What percentage of the time in your estimation?
I guess the question would be, what's the percentage of homes that get their CO that actually have,
That shouldn't have.
that shouldn't have, or that have what we would deem as non-potable? I don't think we have a hard number on that.
Like any contaminant for any reason, any potable issue. So I think we did pull that number for Brian.
Oh, we did? Okay. I don't have that number on me. Do you
Get that.
remember?
I can't remember off the top.
I mean, I think that number would be really important in trying to advocate for change on that. You know, like how often does it happen to people? Would be interesting, especially since you said you can't always reach them, right? Because you maybe, how many of them come back like that would be the, you know, what you could find out. But then how many of those have, because it's changed ownership or, you know, upon receipt of that, you can't even notify them or have to jump through extra hoops. That's what's kind of scary, I think.
I will say, one of the things that we have started doing is when we know that we're sending this HRE to the, say, developer, we're also trying to now send a copy to owner, or say, we'll have the name and then we'll say, or current owner, to whatever the known address that it's supposed to be there. And, you know, some of those do get returned. Maybe they don't have their mailbox up, I don't know. But we do try to get those HREs to the actual physical location.
In the situation of a home purchase, having it tied to the certificate of occupancy would give the home buyer leverage to get the well repaired, casing depth changed or whatever's necessary, without having some sort of something holding over the builder's head. They're stuck. They're left holding the bag.
It probably costs thousands of $10,000 to drill a well, a deep well.
I would say on average right now, a well installation, you're probably looking at around $10,000 to $12,000. Water treatments could range from $500 to a couple thousand.
That would be ongoing if they had arsenic in it. It wouldn't just be no one-time thing. It would be ongoing.
There is maintenance.
Yeah, ongoing maintenance on any treatment system, really. Yeah.
Scary, if you will.
In some ways, but in other ways, you know exactly what's in that well. Like if you receive the results, you know what's in that well. and you can address what's known. And then the only difference is it's the property owner, the well owner's responsibility long-term to sample the well every couple of years. I have a well. Lots of folks in our office have a well, and I love it. It's a good well.
Water bill.
No water bill, no power bill.
Are there other health risks besides the well? Like we found a well on our property. It's not in use. You know, it was there from previous, like it was a developer, but that well belonged to the house that used to be there before, you know, the neighborhood was built. Is there, if there was anything, you know, would there be a way to trace that back for me to see what the history of it was? Or is there any kind of risk to living on land that has some of these issues if you do not have a well?
So that's interesting that you have an existing well on site. So now the plat review process, when subdivisions are being divided, the plats go through a review process, and environmental health is part of that. And one of the things we're looking for is that existing wells or existing septic systems identified so that they can be properly abandoned, because it can be a safety concern. Everybody remembers baby Jessica. If it's known, and oftentimes, you know, it may not be known, so we ask developers as they're developing these properties, if they come upon a well, because we issue a permit for the well abandonment and we locate it. Now we've got our equipment, we can identify it for mapping. But it's very important that those wells be properly abandoned. Otherwise, that in addition to a safety issue, they can be like a source of contamination for others in that area that may be served by wells.
Or, and I will say, not that we would necessarily require abandonment, but depending on what the situation is, I mean, it could be a very well, I mean, it could be a nice well, and you can use it for irrigation.
Well, that's what my husband.
Even though you got public water supply or whatever, I mean.
And some folks do.
Yeah, I mean.
That's a.
Yeah. The big thing that I would say is, as long as the wellhead is properly protected, it's got a good wellhead seal on it, and that we're responsible as far as property owners not to place things that would be potential sources of contamination around.
It's not a place to pour your oil and
Right.
leftover paint, things like that.
Well, thank you, David, and thank you, Tracy, for that overview. We appreciate that. Moving on with the agenda, that finishes our division report. But if y'all like to go around for any announcements, Janet, we can start with you if you'd like.
I don't have, well, I have one thing, and two things actually. I want to give a shout out to Jackie for some recent work that she is beginning to kick off with a focus group for bilingual employees that we have, with the focus on recruitment and retention. And that's something obviously that is important for all of our positions. But we have the goal of having a unique focus because bilingual, and I know that you can attest to this, Missy, in terms of hiring staff, is increasingly complex, more so than even other positions. And so just wanted to give Jackie a shout out for that. We've only just begun, but we have begun, and that is awesome. And then similarly, or not similarly, but related, have some cards that I'm going to pass out to you guys, because every meeting that we're at, most of the directors are saying, we're hiring. And we're still hiring, and we're hiring a lot. We have a whole lot of different positions that we're hiring for. And it is tough from a recruitment perspective. And so, in addition to the work that we're going to be doing with human resources and Nicole and the communications team, we've already started with these cards. And what these cards are is something that when you guys are out at dinner, or you go, I don't know, wherever you go, and you're interacting with people, if you know they want a job, awesome, pass them out. But even if you don't know that they want a job, then don't steal this idea, okay? Even if you don't know that they want a job, but they give you great customer service, talk us up and let them know that Union County is hiring. And so it's got a QR code on it, and they can very simply just scan that, and it'll take them to the hiring page, and then they'd be able to apply. So since you guys are ambassadors for the county and for Human Services, this does take them to all county jobs. We've done this, I believe, for a few specific jobs, but this takes them to all of the jobs. So I'm going to pass these down. There can be as many as you would like to have, but right now, take a few. And that's all that I have.
Guess not a lot of people are here today. I just wanted to let everyone know that our Christmas Bureau, where we started taking applications the end of last month, and we did find a new location for it, and that will come out soon. Let my staff make that announcement out to the public. I know we're always looking for volunteers, so I can make sure that that information gets out as well. And my apologies, I didn't get to put together everything for the community health improvement plan, but I will bring that back next month. That's it.
Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Monica Smith. I'm in reporting for Ashley Lentz tonight. I wanted to say that we are continuing to hire for our Medicaid expansion positions in economic services. Also, in child welfare services today, we had the Child Protective Services Program Manager and Supervisor. They were out in the community educating the staff at the Union County Library on mandated reporting for child abuse reports. Also, they will be at Common Heart later this month. I believe it's on October the 25th, and they will be educating their staff also. We are always recruiting for foster care placements, so if you know of anyone who would like to be a foster parent, we have a page on the Union County website, and there is a link there under foster parenting that you can click on that, and you can submit the form, and we can send out information to you. Thank you.
Anything from the commissioners for an update?
Yes, I'll just speak briefly for those that may not know. We have a vacancy on the Board of County Commissioners. Back on August 8th, Commissioner Stoney Rushing passed away, and the remaining 4 members of the board had 60 days to make a decision and to make the appointment, and we were unable to do so. We had 3 candidates that were nominated, and on each vote, the result was 2-2. So I just wanted to make sure everyone knew that the window for the Board of County Commissioners making a decision on that vacancy closed this past weekend, and now a 10-day window is opened with the Clerk of Court, Wendy Maynard. So Wendy Maynard will be making a decision, hopefully sooner rather than later, but we'll be making a decision on who is appointed to that seat. So stay tuned.
Will she make that decision from the ones that y'all were?
She's not obliged to, but I can tell you she's taken this job seriously. She has a process that she's following. I know she's reached out to all 4 of us, and she asked some very good questions today of me, and I imagine the other 3 commissioners. And but she's not obliged to choose someone that we nominated or someone we suggested to her. She's, I think, guided by one thing, which is the best interest of Union County. I think this is in her capable hands now. I wish the board had been able to decide, but we couldn't. And it's very important to fill this vacancy sooner rather than later, because there are a number of very big issues in the county on which the current board is split 2-2. And we need that 5th commissioner to move us in one direction or the other. So just wanted to make sure everyone was aware that hopefully that decision will be forthcoming from the clerk and perhaps the next next few days.
One more question.
Yeah.
Will they serve a full term, or is this until an election?
This seat is for, this is the seat that Stony Rushing occupied. He won re-election last year,
Right.
and that term is typically a 4-year term. However, in situations such as these, where there's a vacancy, there is the appointee will serve until 2024. So the last regular meeting of 2024, and there'll actually be a special election. So when the filing period opens this December for 2 full 4-year terms, there'll also be a filing that opens up for this unexpired term, which will be for 2 years, because this appointee will basically go about 13 months and change, and then whoever wins this unexpired term will serve 2 years from December 2024 to November of 2026.
Putting it back on track.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
I forgot one thing. Sorry, Michelle Marcano was not able to join us tonight, but we will not see you guys again before Veterans Day. And so just wanted to make sure that y'all are aware, not only is Michelle and that team heavily in preparations for that time period, but specifically, we will be having the opening ceremony at the Monroe Air Show, Warbirds Air Show on Saturday, the 11th at 10:45 a.m. And that time will be recognizing veterans and also awarding JROTC students several awards. And so if y'all are able to make it, encourage you to do that. It's actually before the air show starts. I believe the air show doesn't actually start until noon that day, but if you've never attended, you also would probably enjoy that. It's definitely a big event, but specifically the Veterans Day celebration component of that beforehand at 10:45.
Is there any other announcements? I'll make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion's adjourned. Or the meeting is adjourned.